And then you
I'm
got,
sorry.
the suicide epidemics and stuff like that. I mean, if we would just become more aware that we're having a health crisis, I think, especially, I don't know what it's like around the world, but definitely here in America. And I think a big part of that is our mental health, I
Oh
think.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, you're absolutely right because uh, generally speaking, if you take a normal American, they probably tend to their spiritual side somewhat, probably different from like me or you. Or heck, we're all different, so it's going to be different from everybody. But to some degree, it's kind of expected you tend to your spiritual side, whether it's through religion or whatever else. Um, you go see a doctor once a year, whatever. But as soon as you go for like your mental health, things get weird. Like people won't talk about it. There's nothing talked about, and like people will just shut up. And, and that's it. They might
Start
not even they yeah they might not even look at you as if you're weird or something, or they might. But either way, it's not talked about. Nobody talks about that stuff, and then if you talk about it, um, um, there's some people that lose friends over that. There's some people that lose family over that. And this is, to me, it's just ridiculous. Like, that's just another part of you. Not just, it's probably the most important part of you because if your mental health is not right, it actually affects the rest of your body. It affects your physical health. And I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but um, that's that. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. It's been proven. Your mental health, if it's not on point, if it's not doing good, it can affect your physical health as well. And so I don't know why that's not the first thing we look at. I don't know why that stigma is attached. I don't know how it. I really don't know how it came about. I don't know why it's here, but it is. And so I think people are just going to have to figure out like maybe I just need to do it and I don't know, be more. I would because you might get attacked for it, but like be open about it because if you're not going to talk about it, nobody else is going to. If you're not going to talk about it, nothing's going to happen with it either. So
Yeah. And I think that that's one thing is like the more and more I look into some of this stuff is that our like when you have, anger and bitterness and depression and anxiety and all of those types of things, you actually store those things physically inside your body. Like, I mean, they'll actually affect different organs, gut health, heart health, cancer, like all of those types of things. Even like Alzheimer's is linked to like childhood trauma and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, and to me, I don't understand why we obviously know when something's wrong and when it's upfront, like if you're physically hurting, right? So obviously it's like, oh my goodness, I'm having a heart attack or I'm sick or, something like that. Like if you have strep throat, you can feel it hurting in your throat, but we
right.
don't seem to take our emotional pain and treat it the same way for some dumb reason. Um, but
Yeah,
we also have all of these conspiracies about like chemicals in our food, vaccines, and all of these different things that are killing us, like heart disease and cancers and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that like chemicals in foods and stuff like that doesn't have anything to do with it. But I think that we're more susceptible to those types of things because we're in such poor mental and spiritual health and stuff like that. We're just
yep.
angry, we're anxious all the time, we're bitter. We can't relax at all, and I think that almost has more of an impact on our health than our food and vaccinations and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty good. And that last part you're talking about not being able to relax. That was a rough. That's a rough one. That's a rough one for everybody. And you can take somebody that the rest of the world might deem as lazy. I bet that dude still can't relax. Because we're told to constantly do stuff, and I'm preaching to myself here because I'm in that mode again because I'm trying to get somewhere at the moment, and it's getting me there, to the point where I can do it again. So it's a little hard for me at the moment, but man, that was key. It's like being able to relax. It's like, can you sit there? Could you like hang out in you know for a day, for half a day, hell, even for an hour? And for most people, that would be a no. That would be a big fat no. Can't do it. Got to do something. Got to look at your phone. Got to look at the TV. Whatever. And and I'm about halfway convinced part of it has to do with if you relax and you slow down, it makes you deal with that shit that goes on inside your body and in your head. And and most of us don't want to deal with that little thing that's going on inside our head. And so you got to
That
do it, but
that's the hardest part with not having like a 9 to 5 type of job that keeps you busy all day. Is
yeah,
you have to deal with yourself. I mean,
yeah,
and honestly, it is the hardest. You are the hardest person that you will ever deal with in your life.
oh yeah.
It is so tough when you have to sit there, and you're not always, you don't have your brain space isn't taken up by what you have to do at work. You literally find things to make yourself busy, I think subconsciously, just so you don't have to deal with your own shit.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's a defense mechanism, probably from childhood or something. That and to that kind of makes you do that. We all have those. We all have those blockers and those defense mechanisms that kind of make us do that. I think. I think it stems back to being a kid. Um, and it doesn't matter whether you grew up Amish and you were always kind of forced to be busy or you're somebody else. You're gonna figure out how to be busy. To like you were saying, to avoid dealing with your shit, but because it's painful.
Can I actually jump in there and get you to go into that? Like you touched on, being Amish and being a kid and stuff like that. Like, did you kind of want to go through your worldviews, religious beliefs, spirituality, and just how you view other people in the world, even from like how you transition from Amish? Did the military teach you anything? Where are you at now? Like, how do you view humans? How do you view God? How do you view your spiritual health? Like all of those things. Like, is that something that you'd like to talk about?
Sure, sure, yeah, I can go in that, and you might have to ask me questions again because that's kind of a lot there. Um, uh, I mean, as an Amish, especially when you're a kid, kind of you view things as black and white because everything is built around you the exact same, and anything different from you is probably wrong in your world. And so you look at things very black and white. You look at religion very black and white. So even when you leave, even when I left, I still needed a black and white structure. And that's why I kind of got into the whole Southern Baptist thing of the whole saved thing. It still had its own structure, but it had enough freedom for me. Um, it had enough freedom for what I wanted, but still had its structure. So that's kind of how I got into that. I mean, seriously, that it's as
Yeah,
simple as that. And
yeah.
so then things were still black and white. Even when I was in Ohio, when you knew me up there, things were still had to be black and white. And if I didn't have the answer, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't think about it. You couldn't just be free and like just let it be what it is, I guess.
So is that
And
what was built, what everything was built around then from the Amish was more certainty? You needed to have like certainty.
oh, yeah, probably yes. I mean, it is what it is. It's a cult. It hurts people, but it gives people know what you're going to do day in and day out. And there's a lot of certainty there. And I think people just can't deal with uncertainty of things. I think that's the biggest killer almost of anything, and not in just religion. But so I went from believing, I guess, and I don't know that I really believed the way Amish did, but it was just easy to just fall in line. And then, I started believing differently in the whole being saved type thing. Uh, I guess the general Christian thing, if there is one, there's a bunch of different denominations there. So I started believing that, and then I left and believed that for years. And then I joined the military, and I had a rough go for about 2 to 3 years because I still wanted black and white, but the military was constantly changing. And while it gave you a structure, there was so much that wasn't black and white anymore. The military has probably changed quite a bit from when you were in. It's moving to it's kind of going from we tell you how to do everything to we give you a mission and you figure out how to do it. And in some, especially where I was at the last 4 years, that's more how it was. You kind of they gave you a thing to do, and you figured out how to do it. And so I was around, every color and shade of people in the world, every culture, straight, gay, it meant everything. And by the time I got out, it had changed my mind so much because I had seen good people from every culture, every sex orientation, however you want to put it, every color, it didn't matter. I'd seen good and bad people from all of them to the point where it changes your mind so much you're like, good Lord, it's not all black and white. And now, now I look at everything that way as like everybody has their own walk. Nothing's really black and white. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know shit. And um, and with religion, where I'm at now with religion, like I don't consider myself and people this is probably if any of my like some people watch this is gonna be worse than if I'd have come out as gay to them or something, but I swear. But like I don't consider myself Christian. I really don't. And I mean, I haven't for years. Even when I consider myself Christian, I didn't put any stock in the Bible. I really didn't, because there was so much that didn't line up with the way of what I knew. But the Bible to me just didn't make any sense because it just didn't line up with what I knew, I guess, in my gut or in my heart or whatever of what God was to me. None of it lined up. There's some pretty horrific stuff in there, and we're told to believe everything in there, and all this other stuff, but yet you have denominations of every sort that kind of pick and choose and go through there. And with that being said, I think there's actually a lot of pretty down the earth knowledge in there that if you took it for what it was instead of putting a religious spin on it, could actually work for some people. Not all of it, but there's some practical stuff in there. Uh, so,
I agree.
so
Yeah,
I do.
there is a lot of like wisdom in there as long as it's not diluted by some religious crap.
Yeah, yeah, and so it just didn't make any sense. The first thing that didn't make any sense to me was so supposedly you have Satan and God supposedly, and Adam and Eve were told not to eat off the tree, and we're told that it's the tree of good and evil, but it's not. It says the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So it tells me one thing: we were never intended to have a knowledge of good and evil the way we do now, if if the Bible is true. And not just that, how does one man's choice to eat an apple forever damn me to hell, yet I have to accept another man dying on a cross for me to make it to heaven? But yet, this man that died on the cross is supposedly more powerful. How much freaking sense does that make? It doesn't. There's nothing in there that computes in my head. And by the way, I'm not judging because I have a bazillion friends and family that believe that exact thing. I don't care. If it works for you, it works, but it doesn't work for me. Um, and so that just doesn't make any sense to me. It does. It can't even compute. I don't think you can make it compute in a child's brain. No, so that was one of the first things that just really started hitting me as just kind of odd. It's like, okay, I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. Not just that, we've been the churches I went to, and to some extent, I still believe this to be true, is that God is like a dad, almost in a sense that he just loves us or he's just connected to us. But let me put this in context. They also say that God's ways are higher than ours. So if you're a dad and you have a kid, would you ever throw him in a burning pit of fire? Like again, doesn't compute.
But
Doesn't make
somehow
any sense.
somehow they try to do a full circle with that his ways are so much higher than ours that his evil can actually be love.
But bullshit.
Oh, it
I'm
is. It is
I'm sorry.
100%. I agree. I agree 100%. And but that's what it comes down to, because I've had that very question when I was part of, the Christian church, and I asked so many different people because I struggled with it so hard, but all their answer would always be was, well, his ways are higher than our ways. Like, we'll just never understand it. And I'm like, that just doesn't work. That does not
No.
work. You cannot make his ways so high and so good that his evil is good. Like, you can't do that.
No, no, it's impossible. And I shouldn't. I guess I shouldn't say bullshit about that. It's just because people are going to feel judged by that, and I don't want, because if you believe that, by all means, if that's what gets you through life without doing crazy shit to people, then by all means. It's just that's not what it just doesn't compute for me. Um, and so so if God's ways are higher than mine, and I can sit here and understand how if I ever were to have kids, I don't even have kids, and I understand that I could never do that to them. You think God would do that? No way. There is no way. Um, and so that stuff just no, that whole thing just doesn't compute to me anymore. Like, I legitimately think people see God as this evil, horrible being. This, like, you know, you will love me or else kind of deal. And it's bullcrap, because they're like, God is a loving God.
To
But
teach
because
him a
the thing,
lesson, you take him out
yeah,
and throw him in the burn pit out back,
yeah,
or throw him in the
yeah,
pool. Yeah, we have, three kids, these ones didn't turn out so good. We're going to go throw them all in the pool and hope the next three are going to be better. But
yeah.
whichever ones of those accept me, they're going to be all right. The other ones, we're just going to, we'll just burn them when the time comes.
Yeah, so I don't buy into that concept at all anymore. And it works for some people, and it keeps some people doing pretty good. But for me, it was a band-aid, is all it was. Honestly, it was a band-aid, because I kept going back to church year after year after year, week after week, sometimes 3 times a week, Wednesdays, Sundays, and Sunday nights. And you wait on healing or whatever else it is, and it ended up just being a band-aid for me to not deal with my shit. And so and so until I dropped that and started actually dealing with my crap, nothing worked. And I have since looked back, and I've run across pastors actually in a church that have stood up there and talked, and I have actually now realized they actually understand some of that, but they can't say it. The people will never understand it. And I've run across some real rotten eggs too. Um, So it just, I don't know, man. It just doesn't compute for me anymore. None of that just does not work. And even if I take my brain out of people are going to sit here and go, oh, you're thinking too much about it. Well, if I take my brain out of it and I just leave this in here, what I know is in here, it still doesn't compute. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't line up. It just doesn't. You can't have one. You can't have the two. You can't have love and hate. You can't have bad and evil. Bad, good and bad, good and evil, two, and in itself, it's not. It doesn't make up one thing. It either is or it isn't. To me, that's the way I look at it, at least. And 10 years from now, you'll talk to me, and I'll probably have a completely different uh, way of looking at things. Because I mean, you grow and change, but it just doesn't work for me. It just, I don't believe that to be true anymore.
But that's the way it's supposed to be, though. Like, we've been taught that you're supposed to believe one thing and you're supposed to believe it for the rest of your life. Like, once you have your beliefs
Yeah.
cemented in, I mean, they kind of give you maybe a small box that you can move around in, but we're essentially told that, if your views and stuff change, you're just a wishy-washy person, or,
Yeah.
that you don't really have any fence posts in that, center you and ground you or anything like that. But that's just simply not true.
No, no, it's not. It 100% is not. If you're not living and growing, you're dying. You're doing one or the other. And if you're not growing, you're dying. So if you're growing, your mind is going to change. Um, I think people whose minds never change, and everything remains the same, I think they'll never grow. I shouldn't say that. I'm just like, they're all different than me, but I don't think you're ever going to grow and ever going to get past your bullshit. I don't think you're ever going to have really much of a better life. Um, and with all that being said, I think the number one reason I got out of that is I didn't want to be a good person, because of all these things that I believed in, or because I was supposed to be. I wanted to be a good person because I genuinely wanted to be. I wanted to give because I had enough to give. I wanted to give because that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a good person because that's just who I am. And the other
That's
part is
so
too is
good.
like
Yeah.
the other part, another part that really goes into that is like people are always like, but it's all for the glory of God. Okay, if you're a dad with a kid and your kid does good, you really want that kid to be like, oh, but it's all my daddy? No, no. I mean,
You
if you
would
want
be the biggest narcissistic asshole.
pretty much, yeah, pretty much. And I don't think people ever stop to think about that. I don't think we ever stop to think that maybe religion was designed years ago to keep people in a box. When it came, like, law and religion go hand in hand, and they've been trying to get out of laws and religion supposedly since the time of what, Moses or something, and we still haven't gotten past it. We're still there. We're still there. We just have this new side of the Bible that we're like, oh, but this counteracts that. The New Testament, all those other. I said, no. You either get out of, man. It's like, come on, live a little bit. Like, and I only say that like live a little bit and with no regard to anything. I'm just saying, like, at some point, man, let it go. Don't spend your entire life here miserable because of it.
Well, so when you wanted to get out of Christianity, so this is the one thing that I'd kind of run into is like, did you get out of Christianity just so you could go do whatever you wanted to do, so you could go whore around and like, was it like an excuse to just go sin? Like, did you become a worse person? Did you become a better one? Do you all of a sudden, not have a monogamous relationship? Are you just out there sleeping with women? Are you a druggie? Are you an alcoholic? Or did it actually help you get out of some of these things?
And now it actually helped me get out of it. It I do less of everything mentioned because of getting out of it, honestly, and because I actually dealt with my crap. And uh, let me put something to you this way. So something that I guess studies they did on that the Christian church deals with is probably a good 70 to 80% of men are completely addicted to porn. And I'm not saying don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. I don't care. That's your life. You deal with that how you're going to deal with it. I personally don't like addiction for myself. And so you go to church Sunday after Sunday, and maybe at some point you admit this problem to somebody, they pray for you, it becomes a band-aid, and now you can't ever bring it up again because it's supposedly gone away, right? And you never deal with your shit. And so I personally, to deal with addictions and things of that nature or of other natures, I had to let that go. I had to let that band-aid go and deal with it. And it was freaking painful. God, it was painful. It's still, some days it's still painful, but you know what? I've had more freedom from stuff like that than I've ever had. I've been able to help more people than I've ever been able to.
And a lot of those things, and once again, I'm speaking from personal experience. I don't know how it was for you, but there's something about when you think that those things are a sin and that you are kind of defiled or possibly not in right standing with God, you remain trapped to those things
Yep.
somehow. Like
Yep.
that legalism of, there's even a lot of people that would say, well, you're accepted by God, you can still maybe go to heaven or something, but there'd be a lot of people that would still say if you're trying to get healing or anything like that, that it may block that act. Like, it's a sin, like and going into
Yeah.
crazy shit there. But once you let go of that and actually realize that that's not a sin. Like, I don't give a rip about what, if somebody says I'm sinning. I don't care if somebody says I'm going to hell. I don't care about any of that stuff. There is something that when you do that, it actually releases you from the very things that you've been fighting years to try to get out of.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you keep fighting it and you keep thinking about it and you let it consume your life and you think is that terrible? Yeah, it's gonna be. It's gonna be terrible to you. Maybe not in the way you think, but it'll eat you up. Uh, so I'd rather just let it go. It's like anything else. It's like bitterness. It's like heck, I was talking to somebody about, the way I grew up, and they're like, "How could you ever forgive somebody?" Well, you got to let it go. It's going to consume you. It affects me, and it's like these things that like people think are sin, whether it's addiction, whatever else. It might affect you in a negative manner, but it's only because you're letting it do it. Because you're putting this Band-Aid on, and it's consuming you, and you can't let it go. You can't let it go. And so for me, I chose to let the thing go that was causing this to continue to eat me. These things were eating me up, and I'm not saying they're bad because they're a sin, but they were bad for me, for my health and different things like that, my mental health. So I chose to let him go, and the only way I could let him go was by letting the thing go that was keeping it there. And so I like Christianity to go, and so, and so
Oh,
that's where I'm at
that's
today.
really good. Yeah.
And again, I just want to make it really clear. It's like if my closest friends and family are Christians, I'm not knocking that. If that's what keeps you sane and keeps you healthy, then I recommend you do it. But it didn't work for me.
Yeah, you're not trying to yank the rug out from underneath anybody, but you're also
Mm-mm.
asking, or me, like I guess where I just have a problem with people who are into deep religion is when they start beating other people over the head with it. Like
Yeah.
if it works for you, I'm very happy for you, but don't let your religion tell other people what they need to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because everybody's walk is different. You might do better in Buddhism. You might do better in Christianity. You might do better as a Muslim. I don't care. You walk your walk. You do what works for you. But for me, I would rather have looked. I guess I chose to look inward a little bit more and into my headspace a little bit more and kind of figure out what makes me tick. And I ended up, I mean, the things that I kept praying, I guess, for years to get released from were released when I let the whole thing go. And so my life has been better for it.
Through your Amish, you kind of left Christianity behind or whatever. Like, what are you like? What makes you tick now? Like, I mean, whether it's friends or whatever. I mean, is there something that fills that gap for you now?
um, well, just I would say first thing I'd say is just because there's a gap doesn't mean it has to be filled. Um, it would maybe for some of us, but for me, like with the thing we were talking about earlier, you have to learn to relax, just being, uh, figure your headspace out. But one thing when you have a gap like that, you're going to end up with a lot of anxiety, potentially. And I had to learn to feel that. I had to learn to just feel that, whether it was anxiety, whether it was pain, depression, whatever it was, just learn to feel that, figure out what's going on in your body, get more grounded with who you are in your body, and just feel it, let it be what it is. And honestly, that's a lot. I don't have a lot going on in this stuff anymore. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not. I'm really not anywhere. Like I'll talk to anybody about anything. But that's kind of where I'm at. Is like um, I'm just figuring out me. I'm just staying grounded in who I think I am as a person, and just letting things be what they are, and they'll work themselves out most of the time. That's where I'm at. And
Oh,
what I guide myself by, here is this simple. Here's what guides me now, because people think when you leave something like that, um, is that you have no more moral basis. Well, it's the complete opposite has been true for me. And my guiding light has been this: do what you're going to do, as long as it affects nobody else. That as long as I'm not hurting somebody, you can do what you're going to do. And that has worked better for me than almost anything else. And it's brought me to this point. Here's another one where I'm at too. I'm not religious. Like I don't do any of this stuff anymore. So it's brought me to this point where I've realized that part of who I am is actually a very giving person. Like I really want to help people and give to people. But I've also had to realize, and I think we talked about this before, is I can't give if I don't have anything. And we're taught, especially in Christianity, we're taught to give, to give, to give, to get. Really, you give everything you've got to get. And well, I think the opposite is true. Like you cannot, you can't. I can't. I cannot give to anybody in any way if I don't take care of myself. And so that's what I'm doing right now. How can I be, how can I get married if I can't be responsible for myself and if I'm not in a good space? Um, and if I can't figure me out, I'm not going to be any use for anybody else. I I mean, maybe I want kids someday. Like I can't have kids if I'm not good. And that might sound selfish as all get out, but really I mean, it's kind of in a way it's kind of the opposite, but at the same time, it's like I want to give, and that in itself is selfish because I get more out of it than everybody else does. And so that's where I'm at right now. Just kind of realizing who I am is like I'm kind of in this space right now where just kind of figuring out my own headspace and getting more grounded in here and just figuring out who I am at the core because I lost a lot of that when I left the military. And I want to give to
Now,
people.
yeah. You had kind of the way that you had put it one other time that we had talked is that you're just kind of agnostic about everything. Like
Pretty much.
you're not necessarily trying to put pieces back together and come up with something that you believe. You're focusing on yourself, what makes you tick, and everything else you're kind of dealing with as you need to. Is that kind of how it's going for you, or?
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm not, and my headphones just went out, so the audio's trash. That's why. But yeah, right now, I'm kind of like I'm not putting any pieces back together. It is what it is. It just works better for me. I'm very, I guess, in a lot of ways, I'm very agnostic. Like, um, I would say I believe in a God, but not in the sense that most people do, I guess. I think we're connected to him no matter what, or whatever you want to call it. I think people trying to label God just causes problems um, a lot of the time because it just wants to put everything in a box. And I think we're all connected no matter what we're doing, where we're at. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And when it comes to like politically too, like I'm not. I went from being far right Republican to probably a middle of the road person, just very agnostic, open to thinking about things in my own way instead of subscribing to a narrative. Um, and that's where I'm at with everything. That's where I'm at with religion. That's where I'm at politically. Anything in life, I want to think about it. Like I want to see where I'm at with this instead of subscribing to something. And that's how I tend to look at everything now.
I mean, isn't that something that kind of, if the rest of the world would take that more agnostic approach to a lot of things, like, and I'm not even telling people that they can't have a religion, but if it's the dogmatic beliefs in everything, and most of the time it's two things that gets humanity in trouble: dogmatic beliefs in religion and nationalism.
Yeah,
Like, and the thing, I mean, I love America. Like, I'm not telling people that you can't love America. Like, this is a beautiful country. The people here are
yeah,
awesome. Like,
yeah,
I am not sitting here being an American hater, okay? But if I
yeah,
sit here and I believe that we're better than everybody else just because we're Americans, and I take some whether it's a super right or a super left view of things, and if I take a dogmatic view on religion, that type of stuff gets extremely good people to do extremely horrible things to each other. And those two, the dogmatic religions and the dogmatic nationalistic people, are the ones who do the most evil things to each other, I think.
yeah. I would agree with you, and I think they kind of go hand in hand. To be quite honest with you, I think the whole religion and political spectrum. I think they go hand in hand. Um, I really do. And with all that being said, again, I don't care where you're at politically. I just want you to think about it. That's it. Just think about it instead of following something for a change. And maybe think about it. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because then you don't have the structure. But think about it. Think critically. Think about everything you're doing, and instead of just following it. That's it. That's really it. And if you critically think about it and you land on one or the other, fine. But at least you've thought about it, and at least you've walked your own path.
Yeah,
So
and My thing too that I had to get a place that I had to get to, and I know lots of people that it this did not lead to a slippery slope of them leaving Christianity or anything like that. But even other friends of mine, including myself, had to realize that, okay, if you're battling with something in your mind spiritually and you're just having a rough go at it, you have to realize that God has to at least be big enough to allow you to go figure yourself out, to figure out what makes sense in your life, what makes sense in the world, to think critically about what you believe.
Yep.
He has to
Yep.
be big enough to allow you to do that without just immediately sending you to hell, without giving you cancer, without
Yep.
all of those things. Because I actually don't think that a lot of people, what they call faith, like a spiritual faith, I think that most people don't have that because I don't think they ever allow themselves to question it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you can have any type of faith if you can never think critically about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not your own. It's not your own. And if you have, let's say you have a God that's actually going to put you in hell for doing this or that or not or not all that. Well, you're going to follow that. If you believe that, you're going to follow that to a T if at all possible. But it's not you, so you're probably going to go there anyway. Um, if you're gonna, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really believe that, but I'm just saying, if you're gonna follow that narrative, I mean, you end up there anyway because it's not you, because you haven't critically thought this through. And I'm not saying there's nobody that hasn't critically thought it through and ends up there. That's not what I'm saying. I just want you to think about it, and then go where you're gonna go. And if that's Christianity, if that's to be a Muslim, if it's Buddhist, whatever, don't care. Just think about it. Just walk your own. Maybe have the stones to be open about it, um, because it helps others out, helps others get to where they're going to. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. I'm sorry.
No, no, I mean, by all means, I mean, go on whatever tangent you want to, and, yeah, talk about whatever you want. And if they're like, I mean, you're out there in Colorado and stuff like that, how do you stay connected with people? I mean, obviously, you and I are staying connected right now, but like, is that a key thing to your lifestyle, or are you a loner where you can go talk to the mountain goats or the sheep or mountain sheep, and that's all you need, or what?
Probably a little bit of both. I don't make enough of a point of connecting with people, because even if you're a loner, to some degree you still need people. You really do. We were meant to be connected. And I think we are. We are connected, whether you're sitting face to face with people or not. I think we're all connected. But I think you have to make a point of connecting face to face with people, because it does us a lot of good. Um, and I struggle with that, especially out here too, because um, this place is my world. It's great. I'm comfortable. At the same time, it still pushes me a little bit. And I could spend weeks at a time and just talk to the mountain goats like you're talking about. But we do. I get out. I connect with my family. I've made new friends here. Heck, I go down once or twice a month and sing karaoke and make a fool out of myself. It'll get people talking to you. Just to get just to get somebody face to face. That's how I connect with people. I talk to them in the language they can understand. Um, and I don't know. That's just kind of out here doing my thing, I guess.
And that isn't that one thing though, like just I mean, real quick, when you're out there, in the mountains and with nature, and you see the mountain goats, you see the mule deer, you see elk and all that. Isn't that kind of connecting with God though? I mean, in my view, and it might not be yours, is I actually look at that as God. Like
Yeah,
I don't separate divinity from this earth and from this creation, or, I think we and everything around us is all part of it. And when I go out there and connect with it, talk to it, listen to it, then I'm communicating with God, I guess, for
yeah.
simplest of ways to put it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you're to be completely honest, you're talking about something I haven't necessarily explored yet. Could I see that? Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean that's where I would say I probably feel the best at is out in nature. So I could totally see that. But it's something I personally haven't explored. I probably should. I will now that you said something about it. But for that, I don't know. My honest answer is I don't know. I could see that, but I don't know.
Hey, that's all good. Yeah, you don't need to know actually. Very cool, man. I really appreciate your time and you doing this. It helps out a lot. I mean, if I have to come up with subjects and just sit there and talk about them, I feel like I'm like, oh, I don't want this podcast to be self-centered where it's just always me in front of a camera just talking about shit. I mean, it is really hard to find people who are not going through shit right now. And I'm being very dead. I'm being very dead
Yeah,
serious. Like I know a lot of really deep people, but they're just not willing to talk about it right now. Like because
yeah.
they're just going through random, I mean, spiritual stuff, relationship, dealing with their depression. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. It is really hard to get people on here to talk.
Somebody hops on here, like I'm gonna have, I don't know who's gonna watch this, but I'm assuming I'm gonna have people that don't show up to my wedding because of this, to be quite honest with you. And I
I'm
really don't
sorry,
care.
Ben. I'm
I,
sorry.
dude, I don't care. I really don't care, and I feel better about having it out there, to be quite honest with you, because most of the time I don't talk to people. I talk to people one on one or small groups. And so, I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you one on one, and if you put it out there, I'm completely okay with it. Like, I,
Yeah.
it is, what it is, what it is, because I don't judge them for believing what they do, and I expect the same from them, or find somebody else to be a friend with. I mean, seriously. And I don't mean to be harsh, but at the same time, it's like, no, I really don't need that, man. I really don't.